Hello and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision making to help us figure out what's keeping us stuck and, more importantly, how do we get unstuck. I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today is Alison Smith. Alison is a speaker, trainer, breakthrough coach, author, and podcaster who adds fun, laughter, joy, and connection into every conversation. Using nature as a metaphor for our lives, Alison helps people in an unconventional and unexpected way, which is not only unique, but it always gets results. For example, when you can't see the wood for the trees, Alison most certainly thinks the answer can be found within the wood and within your own inner landscapes. Alison has used the tools in her coaching and problem-solving toolkit for more than 20 years. You can find her tips and tools in her book, Can't See the Wood for the Trees, and her podcast, Landscaping Your Life with Alison Smith. Alison, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Karen. Great to be here.
I am so happy to have you, and there's so much I want to dive in and talk with you about. However, I just have to start here. I know you're from Scotland, so maybe the difference in the way you say things is just the turn of a phrase from Scottish to American, American version of English. But we say you can't see the forest for the trees. Is can't see the wood for the trees the same thing, or is it something different?
The thing is, in the UK, a wood is a small forest, and therefore a forest is really quite big. And therefore, if I'm being really pedantic, I'd say if you're trying to see the forest for the trees, it's impossible because the forest is already too big. So we're already trying something and we've got ourselves overwhelmed about something that actually it's right to be overwhelmed about because we're trying to look at it too much. So that's me being very pedantic. However, you can apply all the same things. But yeah, I understand in some countries it would be can't see the woods for the trees. So yeah, I have to be a bit careful about explaining why I'm saying what I'm saying, so people can then make sense of it for however they relate to the idiom.
Well, thank you. That now that's making a little bit more sense to me. I don't know. It's just the way my brain thinks, I guess. But yeah. I wanted to dive in. The reason I was so excited to have you as a guest on the podcast is because you have a very unique and unconventional way of helping people break through their problems and coaching them, right? So can you tell me a little bit more about what you do and how you do it?
I think it started because I'm an awkward so-and-so, and therefore if anybody tries to tell me what to do when I'm stuck, I'll come up with every reason why what they're saying is wrong. So logic's never going to, I've got quite a good logical brain that will defend against any great ideas. And I suddenly realized that that's the case for a lot of people, that when we're stuck, and if we've been stuck for a while, we've got a whole story that tells us this is why we're stuck. This is why we can't do anything different. This is why it's everybody else's problem. This is why, I can't do anything else. There is no other solutions. So in some respects, the techniques that I share are helpful when we think we've tried to solve them previously using more conventional means and we're still stuck. So we know that we've tried logic. We know that we've looked at it. And so, okay, so how do I really look at this situation differently? And that's when I came across metaphor. I've been using it for, I don't know, over 25 years now. And what I realized was metaphor means that, and I describe it as sending logic and a story on a coffee break. So we say, dearest story, and problem, please go over there. We'll come back to you. We're not ignoring you. Oh no, we're not ignoring you, but we will come back to you in half an hour. We might even need to give our logical brain a time so the logic goes, oh yeah, she's not forgotten me. She'll come back. And then that just means that we can then go off and explore something metaphorically. And that's where I take people out into nature or ask them to, and we use it in our language anyway, so that we use the metaphors to find solutions that we can then apply back to the real life situation.
Okay, so say more about that. What, when you say you use metaphor, what exactly does that mean?
It means, if you think about it, when we're stuck, we might say, I'm stuck in a rut. That's a metaphor. Or can't see the woods, forest for the trees. Another one, going round in circles, uphill struggle. Our language is just full of metaphors because they have another meaning as well. So, because we're not really, we might be going around in circles, but it isn't really an uphill struggle. We're just saying it feels like if I was trying to climb an uphill. So that's the metaphor. And quite often we use them without thinking. We just sort of throw it into conversation because we all understand what it means, as long as we're talking to people within the same country. then actually we're giving a lot more information. So if I'm saying it's an uphill struggle, you'd get a lot more about what I'm talking about. All I've said is one sentence and you're going, oh yeah, it's hard work, needs, is struggling a bit. So you'd be able to get quite a lot more about the situation just from those words. But quite often we use them in that way. We just use them to convey to somebody, oh, I'm stuck, I'm struggling. But what I do is say, haha, that might actually also be where you find the solution, so long as you realize it's a metaphor. Because if it's an uphill struggle, what would you do if you were to imagine going up a hill? What would you do to make it less of an uphill struggle? Oh, well, I might decide to go up a different hill, or I might go with somebody that can take me the best route, or I might get a map out. And so what using the metaphor enables us to do, because I've not then said anything about the situation that I'm describing as an uphill struggle, but I am coming up with solutions that I can then go, oh, so what would a map look like in this situation that I'm struggling with? Or, oh yeah, I haven't asked anybody for any help. I could talk to somebody who's done this before, or, oh yeah, I feel like in this situation, I've set off as if I've got, I don't know what you call them over there, flip-flops, like flip-flops on, and I'm trying to go up a hill with the wrong footwear on. And therefore you can suddenly go, oh yes, I've just rushed out to set up my new company. I've just set up, or going and finding a new relationship. And I've forgotten that I'm acting as if I was, when I was last doing this 20 years ago, and I haven't thought about, how do I do it now I'm a bit older? Or, oh yeah, I need to think about the finances, or whatever it is. Suddenly it's asking us to be a bit more prepared if we've thought of that wrong footwear analogy.
So if I'm getting this, what you're saying is that somebody's got a problem. Let's say that the problem is a marriage, that they are they feel like their marriage is it's not fulfilling, they're not getting anything out of it, they're bored, or they're angry with their partner. Everything everything their partner does just irritates the bejesus out of them. They just
We've all been there. We've all been there.
But they're scared to move on. They're scared to get a divorce. And to them, it just feels like they're walking on eggshells. Every day is a struggle. They don't like where they're at, but they can't seem to decide whether to move on and move out, or whether to stay and try to work on the marriage, because maybe there's something they didn't think of. So they're describing the marriage as, walking on eggshells, being bored. The marriage is, it's dead. It doesn't have any life in it. They're living like roommates. They may be friends, but they're not a couple in the way that they would think about. So those are the kinds of metaphors or language that they're using. How would you go about getting them to say, okay, if this is a metaphor, what would be the solution to the problem you're presenting?
Gorgeous. Okay. So whilst you were explaining, I was picking up some of your languaging. Not sure how I'd do walking on eggshells, So I'll put that at the back of my head, and it might be working while I talk this other example that I can do more easily, and we might come back to that. And it's actually an example that I've just done recently on the podcast episode, so perhaps that's why I'm finding it easier to explore it. And that might be that somebody says, I'm at a dead end. This relationship is at a dead end, yeah? Now, that's great as a description, but dead ends, if we think about them literally, there is nowhere else to go, that's it. So we've sort of already, in our language, decided this is it, we've come to the end. Now, I'm not saying that that's not the case, but what I'm suggesting is if you go out into nature and look for dead ends, you'll be surprised what you discover.
Okay.
Because I went somewhere the other week for the podcast episode, because what I do is I will go out and climb up a hill and go, it's an uphill struggle. What solutions might I have that I can then apply to a real life situation? So in a dead end, I went to where I thought I'd find a dead end. And there was a door in the wall. And then the wall wasn't that high. And I'm thinking, this really isn't a dead end. So yes. So I think the thing is that if you went out and thought about a situation you thought was a dead end, and I went out, we'd see different things. So even if we went to the same dead end, you would notice different patterns because your brain is going, oh, that's what I need to notice. Yeah. And I'd see something different. So I can only give examples, and then somebody can go, oh, I see. And then they go out and go, oh, it's completely different. Yeah. So find something that reflects a dead end. I can remember saying to the neighbours during COVID, going out for a walk with the neighbours, and at the time I'd got a bad, it was before my knee was replaced, and we were entering this beach and it was really rocky, and I said to him, oh, it's a dead end, sweetheart, what? I really don't want to walk all the way to the end and then have to come back. It's not a dead end. It isn't a dead end, Alison. Oh, he says, you just can't see the exit. There is a path out of the dead end at the other end. Now, the other thing, and I don't know why I'm mentioning it, so it could be that one of the listeners goes, aha, was that it was very rocky. And so actually I would struggle with my knees to get to the dead end that I thought was a dead end. But then, I mean, and he's what, 10, I think, the neighbour. And he said, oh, here's a stick to help you. Just the right height for walking. And so we walked. So I think the thing is when you're out there embodying this dead end, somebody might say, do you need a stick? And you go, oh, I just need a bit more support. And if I had the support, I'd be able to have the conversations that I need to have. Or, oh, it really isn't because if we think it's a dead end and there is nowhere to go, that is going to bring up certain mindsets, certain behaviors, so certain tonality, I suspect, certain language that we're going to do. So if I'm there thinking this relationship, it's a dead end, and I imagine my now ex-husband saying something, then I'd react in a particular way because I think it's at a dead end. As soon as I've realized a dead end is very rarely a dead end. Somebody send me a picture of a real dead end, because I have yet to find one. Whenever I'm looking for a dead end, it's like, even if I have to go and put my nose at the end of where I think this dead end is, there's always a path somewhere. And as soon as we realize it's not as a dead end as we thought, we relax. We might then go, actually, the languaging's wrong. I'm at a crossroads and I have a decision to make. Because actually you could argue that by saying it's at a dead end, that's interesting. I'm just thinking about when I got to the end of my marriage, is that this is what I did, which was, I'm at a dead end. I'm at a dead end, but I refuse to make a decision. So by seeing it as a dead, now this is me, and this is not anybody else listening, possibly, but it's I was there absolutely describing it as a dead end. And because that was great, because I didn't have to take responsibility for doing anything differently, because I could just go, it is a dead end. However, if I'd have been able to listen to my podcasts, go back 15, 20 years or whatever, then I might have said, oh, more linguistically or more accurately, I'm at a crossroads. I then have to make a decision. You know, do I go left? Do I go right? So I think what it does is it just, by going out on a walk, it brings up the patterns we're dealing with. So it quite often is, oh yeah, I thought it was that and it's actually this. So it could be, I need to turn a corner and I'm not ready to turn a corner. And therefore I would say, go and find a corner to turn in nature. Now, I know this is the problem with this process. Unless you try it, it can sound, you and I are chatting, I'm getting excited about it. But if somebody's not there in nature while they're listening, they can go, really? Whereas absolutely, next time you're out in nature and you think of a situation that you're either at a crossroads about, want to turn a corner about, go and find a corner, go and find a crossroads. One of the workshops I've done recently was about talking to a brick wall.
Talking to a brick wall.
Yeah, which I did wonder about in terms of in relationships, because of course it can be a bit in a relationship, certainly if it's we think we're heading for a dead end, is that it can feel like we're talking to a brick wall. Now, the interesting thing about that is that when we use our language, we say, oh, it's like talking to a brick wall. And we've made the other person the brick wall. And of course, brick walls can't talk. However, if I ever say to anybody, okay, so if you imagine this brick wall, where are you and where is the other person? Suddenly they go, that person isn't the brick wall. There is a brick wall between me and them.
Oh, now that's interesting, because that's an entirely different feeling, an entirely different situation.
Yes, but we use the words. I have never yet, and I'm not saying never, but I have never yet found anybody that has absolutely rigidly held on to the belief that the other person is the brick wall. As soon as you start looking at brick walls and going, where are you? Where is the other person? The brick wall is then the barrier between you and the other person. And then that opens up the conversation, because it's okay, so how do I get over, around, through this brick wall? The other thing quite often is when we're saying the other person's, it's like talking to a brick wall, it's as if they don't know they're being awkward, Whereas when I go, have you ever found a brick wall that is one-sided, where only one person can see their side of the brick wall?
Oh, that's big.
Yeah.
That one's hard.
But it then it enables us to take personal responsibility back for changing our behaviors, because they're not the brick wall. There is a brick wall. We both know it's there. The interesting thing about brick walls is that very few of us have ever built a real brick wall. Now, I'm not saying, but a larger percentage of people listening will have never built a brick wall. But we see them in our lives all the time. But brick walls that we see in our lives all the time are all there for a reason. Keep the neighbours out, protect us, support, boundaries. They're all there for a reason.
Yeah. So how do people, I think the challenge with a metaphor is that they're so ubiquitous and they're so much a part of the way we speak that we don't even realize we're using them. So it would seem to me, and you tell me if I'm going down the wrong path here, but it seems to me that step number one is just paying attention to what metaphors you're using. Is that, am I getting this right? Or
yeah, what I would say is, in order to get it in the muscle and to get used to it, then you could just go along. I've got an index of my podcast episodes, and currently there's about 63 of them or something. So the idea would be, rather than have to notice, then go and pick an episode that resonates with how you're feeling. Because if I give you a list, you'll be able to go, oh, stuck between a rock and a hard place. No, yes, I need light at the end of the tunnel, please. And so then you'd be able to listen to that episode. And what I do is then talk you through the process. So for that light at the end of the tunnel, I'm walking backwards and forwards through a tunnel in nature that's dark. And then on one occasion, I decided to go through it with my eyes closed. But anyway, it's just exploring the metaphor. So that's one way of doing it. But absolutely, notice the language that you use. Because literally, I can be working with a client, and within the first 5 minutes, I've got 2 or 3 metaphors to go, okay, so which ones of these shall we try first?
Interesting.
Because they're using it, so it makes sense to them.
Why is language so important?
Well, we could be here for hours. Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because it's how we make sense of the world. It's how we make sense of the world. But it also therefore impacts our behaviors, our belief in whether there's different opportunities or not. So quite often I describe what I do as enabling you to see more opportunities and options than you currently can. Currently, you're either saying there are no options or there's a restricted number of options. And by sending the problem and all of the content and logic on that coffee break, it enables us to explore and go, oh yeah, there's quite a few options here. I might not want to do them, you know. But interestingly, if you went out into nature and you're at a crossroads and there's one decision that you don't want to make, so perhaps it's you think you want to leave your husband, but you're scared of doing that, then I would really encourage people, perhaps taking a friend with them, dependent on how they feel about that, is to go, okay, so I'm at a crossroads. Which of these routes represents me making the decision to leave husband? Let me walk on that route, and I'm getting goosebumps now. Let me walk that route and see how it feels. And let me then come back to the crossroads and try other routes. You know, oh, we go for marriage guidance. See what that route sounds like. I'll continue on the route I'm on currently. What does that feel like? And I think what happens is, as much as that sounds quite, it's deeper than it sounds, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say, is you will absolutely embody that. I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it. And that's what happens when I take people out into nature, because their inner wisdom wants them to get this insight. Yeah, because when we use metaphor, we're talking to a deeper part of us, in my opinion. So we're going back to how we communicated, you know, millennia, in terms of cavemen and whatever, talked in pictures. They talked in stories. How have our ancestors taught people? They didn't send them to school, they told them stories. And stories are just metaphors. And so we're connecting in with a deeper part of us that I say, if a picture paints 1,000 words, a metaphor paints 1,000 pictures. So of course that's going to have more information in it than just saying I'm stuck.
You know, that's so fascinating, because one of the things in my work with people that I try to help them do is to see the possibilities, because what keeps us stuck is we think there are none, or we think that we are faced with a binary choice. It's either A or B. That's it. It's A or B. And if all you've got is 2 choices, I call that an ultimatum, right? That's not a choice. So it sounds like what you do is opening people to the possibilities that exist in front of them that they can't see. But I've noticed you said a lot of time, get out in nature, get out in nature. What's the big deal about getting out in nature? Why can't I just walk in my house or apartment or what have you?
Well, because you could turn a corner in your house. Yeah, you could, but you know what's around the corner in your house. So, but I think the thing is that the more I read about the benefits of nature, the more I read about moving your body, is that what I'm doing is hijacking a whole load of other good things about being out in nature. So we're using nature in our language. So all the metaphors that I generally do, which is why the walking on eggshells I've sort of steered away from a little bit, because I don't know how. I mean, I have got chickens next door. But we'd have to, in order to walk it, we'd have to have a lot of chickens, wouldn't we? I mean, it is interesting that we use that. It's like, but that's really hard to do, because to have that many eggshells to walk on, because it's not just one eggshell we imagine, is it? It's a whole pathway. But anyway, so I think we use nature in our language, so we're already doing that. So all I'm doing is highlighting the metaphors that people are using in nature. So somebody might say it feels like I'm on a carousel, and I might go with it, but that's not my preference. I'd be looking for a nature one. So we're using it in our language anyway. I think the other thing about nature is we understand the patterns of day following night. It's got summer, well, not all the way around the world, because some don't have 4 seasons, but most places have 4 seasons. Most places have 2 tides a day, high and low tide. So there's trees lose their leaves. So there's loads of patterns that are inbuilt. We've learned since a kid, really, and therefore we can use those when we're thinking about our problem. And that's the logical reason why I use nature. The other stuff is absolutely, there's so much written these days about the benefits of walking in nature, and actually Move by Caroline Orla. Can't remember what the book's called, but anyway, Move, and her first name's Caroline. I think it's Williams or Williamson. And she talks loads about the benefits of moving forward, the fact that even if we are stuck, by walking forward, and imagine we're walking away from the problem, our internal body goes, oh, I've left that behind. So there's a whole I think that's why turning a corner works, because somehow in our body we've then gone, I've done it. So I'm going back to that crossroads example, going to the crossroads and going, right, I'm making a decision to stay. How does that feel if I walk down this route? I'm making a decision to go for counselling. What does that feel like? I'm making a decision to leave. What does that feel like? It's as if our body then, it's like we've been practicing. It's like we've gone to the gym, we've got it in our body, and our body then goes, oh, the world didn't end. Yeah, because why do we not? Why did I prefer to have that dead end in front of me and hope that somebody else would make a decision for me? Because it was going to be difficult. Whereas if I tried this out, then who knows? I might have had more courage and confidence to go, the world will not end if I make this decision, and this decision is the right thing for me to do. So yeah, I'm taking it.
Yeah, what you said is so important. I hear that from people so many times. They really, what they want, they come to me and they want me to make the decision for them. And unfortunately, or fortunately, that's something that I can't do. Like, so often we're faced with these decisions that only we can make, whether it's in business, whether it's in marriage, whether it's with your kids, no matter what it is, you're the one that has to make the decision. And I think a big part of the reason that people get stuck is because they just don't want to do that. They wish that, someone would come down from on high, the heavens would open, and everything would just work itself out somehow.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's not the way life works.
Oh, the other person would change.
That is the best. You will be waiting a very long time.
Yeah.
But how do you help people get to that point in a less scary way? Because I think what's stopping people when they're wanting someone else to make the decision is because they're afraid. They're afraid of the consequences of them making a choice. Is there anything in nature or in your process that can get them past that fear?
I think it happens because we've sent logic and the story on a coffee break. So in some respects, they're making the decision. So even though I've said, okay, explore the different routes. They know they've left a real problem on a coffee break, so it doesn't feel as real. So it's a bit like we've disassociated from the problem. We're not having that conversation with that person. We're not having to address that person's personality problems or whatever. We're not having to address our fear. So that's already one step removed. So that's there in that corner. We've said, we'll come back to you. We're not ignoring you, because otherwise it will come and keep tapping you on the head and going, you've forgotten me, you've forgotten me. So, but what I've found is that I have to be really clear. We're keeping the story logic on that coffee break. So let's just explore, because then it's less, well, it feels a lot safer, because all we're doing is turning a corner in nature, and that isn't scary. What then happens is, I mean, I could cry at how many times I've gone around a corner and somebody's looked at me and just gone, oh, wow. Because this is why it sounds, it's deeper than it sounds, because they're getting it viscerally. Their unconscious is going, yeah, it is easier than you think to turn that corner, to make that decision about what crossroads to be at, because they didn't have all the other attachments to it. And then having made that big aha, and sometimes I think I know how big it is, and they're not quite as aware of how big it is, because I can see the change in physiology, change in voice, change in tone, the language. And then they come, and then we sort of return back to where we started. We start thinking about the original situation, and suddenly they're more proactive. They're going, oh, I just need to do this, just need to do this. I need to have a conversation. So I don't think it's a, what do we have to do to make it less scary? Is the act of just using metaphor is already less scary, because if we want to, we can just leave all of that rumination to one side and go back and pick up our problem and act as if nothing's happened. Very rarely does that happen, because our unconscious has had a bit of a word with ourselves while we've been doing that walk. And that's why I still get excited, because every walk I go on with people, even if I've been in a wood and, hundreds of people have told me they can't see the wood for the trees, somebody will always see something different.
That's fascinating. So it sounds like when you're working with a client one-on-one, you're actually going with them out on a walk in nature.
Even if I'm at the other side of the world. So recently I've had somebody in Florida, I've had somebody else in LA. Well, yeah, the hills around LA. And so they're going up these trails for, memory capacity or whatever, connection capacity on the phone. I can't even see what they're seeing. Every now and again they went, oh, I need to turn the camera on to show you what I'm seeing. But most of the time I am just asking them questions, they're conveying to me what they can see, and we're having a conversation as they walked. So they did a 45 minutes to an hour walk to the top of the trail and back again, and they got what they needed from that querying. And I just get to hear the excitement or the shift, or I ask questions. And I did it again with somebody in Florida, where we've got gators. They suddenly went, oh, I'd forgotten about that. I forgot, because they were sort of doing circling around a tree next to some water. And then they said, oh, but by the way, there might be some gators in that water. It's like, oh my God, the added jeopardy of gators, which, you wouldn't have in the UK. But so, yeah. And that's what happens in the podcast. In the podcast, I go and do that. So I will go up a hill, or I will go to a dead end and share with you, which is why somebody said, you get so excited. It's like, yes, but what I'm not doing is taking out, can't see the wood for the trees, and just regurgitating what other people have told me. I'm going out today with whatever's going on in my life today, with the wood that I've got in front of me. And then I'm going, oh, I've never noticed that before. So I get, so treading water, my treading water episode involves me in the sea, here in Scotland, treading water with my selfie stick out of the water, trying to sort of say hello, treading water and telling you, sharing insights. So that's how I do it, because the easiest way is for me to demonstrate what I would want people to be doing around a problem they've got.
That is fascinating. And I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. This has been totally delightful. But for people who are listening, if they're interested in listening to your podcast or finding you, tell me, how can they do it?
There's a lot of Alison Smith, so you'll be there searching for that forever. So you're better off looking for Landscaping Your Life. So Landscaping Your Life should find me. Landscaping Your Life, Alison will definitely find me. That's the name of the podcast. That's the tagline in the book, Can't See the Wood for the Trees, Landscaping Your Life to Get Back on Track. So if you're on Amazon or any of these other online booksellers, if you put in Landscaping Your Life, you'll find the book. You'll also find me on social media by using the hashtag Landscaping Your Life, or just doing a search generally for Landscaping Your Life. So that's the best means of doing it. There's quite a lot of video blogs as well on YouTube, and we've just started sharing sort of 1-minute show reels on TikTok. So
that is fabulous. Alison, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom and sharing your unique approach, because I've heard, I've talked to a lot of coaches, I've heard a lot of techniques, and yours is truly unique and it sounds wonderful. I can't wait to try it. So thank you so much. And for those of you who are out there listening or watching, if you like this episode, if you like what you hear or like what you see, please do me a huge favor. Like the video, like the episode, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and by all means, share it. And we look forward to seeing you again in the next episode.